Well, it's been kind of interesting to figure out how this old sheep wagon was in its original day. It has its own personality. Now, there were some comments in last week's video when I started putting these slats on, and that was regarding why are they on the outside of the bows and not on the inside. You'll actually see it done both ways. Now, there's three possible guesses as to why I put them on the outside, and as they say, the first two don't count. You know, as I was figuring out the spacings of the slats last week, I had a couple of bows on my bench, and you all saw how they were on the outside. That's the main reason why I put them on the outside, following the example of how it was done initially. Now, when these were lived in more full time, these were oftentimes double layered with maybe a wool blanket or some felt or whatever was handy at the time for insulation between the inner layer and the outer layer. This wagon, I don't think we're going to put anything other than an outer layer of canvas. It's going to a museum in Columbus, which is 20 miles away, so it will fulfill its purpose, and that is to show what this sheep wagon looked like initially for the most part. Well, this is the stove that came out of this sheep wagon. On the top of this stove, there's a NO number and then 70. So this is a number 70. And on the front door, there's the name Ranch. This would be the door to the oven. To the left of that oven door is another door that would have been the box where you feed your light wood in to cook with. Then underneath would have been the ash pan. The ash pan is not in place, and I can't get this open yet, so I've got to play with that a little bit. This is all pretty rusted out on the bottom, and inside the oven, these are the legs that this stove would have set on. All four legs are there, but they're pretty rusted out. Inside is a grate that you could put your pots and pans on. So this is what's left over of this original stove to this sheep wagon. This is your damper that would control your airflow into your fire pot. You can see all the rust on the bottom. Pretty common for these old stoves. One of the grates has been broken, and I don't know if that piece is around. I haven't found it yet. These are cast iron, and then there should be a cast insert between these two stove tops, and that piece I think is also missing. Then this is the flue that would take the chimney and go up through the roof. So this stove, as it's going to sit inside the sheep wagon, will sit like so, and this chimney will come up this corner of the box. So that stove's going to set right here, and the chimney flue sets right here, and it's going to go right up this area here. So this is a slat on the center of the bows. This is one down, and I cut it off at the second bow because that chimney was going to intersect right where the slat was going to be. So that chimney is going to sit right here, and as it came up, it was going to be right in the way of this slat. So when we get this stove fixed to where I can actually install it, I'm going to put two slats between the first and second bow, kind of in this position, and I'll straddle that stovepipe to where I can put all the tin work to receive that, which would be called the stove jack or the chimney jack. So this is another stove that I have. This is actually one of mine. And it's still standing. It's not without rust totally, but it is more complete. So on the top cover of this stove, you can see the inscription here, ENSIGN, ensign number 7. All the top covers on this stove are actually in good shape, and this one also has this insert still in place like it needs to be. On the front door, the emblem here says the Ensign Economy, and this is Comstock Castle Stove Company, Quincy, Illinois. And where the other door hinged on the side, this actually hinges on the bottom. Grates are still there, and it still has the original handle to take the plates off the top. The door to the left is the door to the firebox, where you'd actually feed the wood, and then it would have a handle here that you would shake the grate to work down the ashes. And in the lower door is the ash pan. On the side is the draft control the heat in the fire. And this stove is actually in pretty decent shape. It has a little bit of rust to it, but not bad. So both of these stoves are actually pretty close to each other. I'll put them in the same position as they would sit in the wagon. It would sit like so. So the one that came out of this wagon is 19.5 inches, and this other one is right at 19. For length, this one is 24.5, and this is 23 and maybe a quarter. So a little bit of variation in these stoves. So then the question comes, how do we get them in? The opening of our door is 18.5. Well, both of these stoves, the top plate is held on with stove bolts on 4 corners. There's one here on all 4 corners. And then these doors are on hinges that can also come off. So we'll take the stove top off, remove the doors, may have to remove the grate. Then the main body of the stove itself will fit through the door. This also has the 4 stove bolts that can remove this top lid. These doors can come off. They have the same hinges. You can remove those. Then the width of the body itself is 17 inches, and that'll fit through the door. I have to reassemble it once it's inside the sheep wagon. So the thought would be, well, why don't I just put this stove in this wagon and forget about this stove? This stove was original to this sheep wagon. This one, I have another running gear that I want to personally build a sheep wagon, and it will go out to our little playground area on Farewell Creek. So this stove has a home for me. I have to talk with the owner on how far we're going to go with these. Do we just set it back in and say this is what it was, or will we put new tin on it and leave everything the way it was so that it can be back up on its legs? We're going to have to visit about that. So for now, I'm just going to set it aside, but this will give me the measurements of where the chimney needs to go. Well, this piece of tin is what goes on the inside of the wall, right here on the face of where the stove is going to go. So you can see it's kind of bent up and kind of normal for this country. I don't know if it's specific to this country or not, but if something sets out very long, sure enough, it's going to end up with bullet holes in it. For some reason, an old piece of junk seems like it says, "I'm a target, come shoot me." Well, this has got a lot of those holes in it. And I'm going to see if I can kind of maybe push some of this back in, close some of these up. I won't be able to close these holes completely. And it does still have this wood frame attached to it with 2 screws. It might give me some kind of a hint of how this front wall was assembled. But first, see if I can straighten this out. got this kind of clamped in place, and it's almost uncanny on how well it fits. This wood brace that goes across the tin, I left those screws already fastened to it, so I didn't remove it. It's a little bit of an angle. It's not square across, but as I flush up this side with my framework, it comes out exactly right on the frame of this bow. There's 2 nails that nailed it together, a couple nails, and then this screw goes through the whole thing. This top curve actually fits right on the bow. They had taken and curled this top edge so that it would match the curve of the bow, and it needs to be left right there. I was going to straighten that out, but it's actually just makes that tin fit really well. This part here I started to straighten out, and then I decided I better wait and finish it first. But as I put these tacks back where these old holes were, I'll bend that back over, and that's just going to fit exactly where it was initially. And I think this length is exactly where it needs to be. I'd say everything is just right back where it was initially. I'll tack that back and it'll be good as gold. Once I get this old framework tacked back in again and kind of hold that together, I am going to back this screw out. There's a little bit of debris, dirt and stuff in behind that. And then this screw will go right into the framework and hold that nice and secure. Still got a sign of these bullet holes, but we closed them up quite a bit. It's just going to be part of the history of this wagon. You know, the interesting part of working on this old sheep wagon, especially this one, where we're trying to figure out what happened in its former life. And as you've been following along, you see I've been able to put all the pieces together of this puzzle, and it's beginning to tell a story. Well, part of that story that I see told in what I just put on with all these bullet holes, it wasn't just an innocent bystander that was out target practicing. The story is much darker than that. Well, we've seen a number of these bullet holes that have come in through this front tin, and a number of them are right here. Well, there was a dark night, and it was late at night, and this old bachelor, we call him Batch for short, had this door open because it was hot that night. And suddenly he was awakened in the wee hours of the morning with bullet shots. The sound of gunfire went through, and that's what took this window out and pierced this tin on the front of this sheep wagon right here. This old bachelor was used to being alone, and he ran his sheep up on the Pryor Mountains. They run about 5 bands. A band is 1,000 sheep. There's a lot of sheep out there, and he was wore out that night. But he was awakened at the sound of gunfire, and it came through the front wall after it broke the glass on this front door. and that's what pierced the tin on the lower section of this door. So he was on a knoll that night, and the gunfire was coming up from downhill. Well, they came through the front door, and you can see how they ricocheted off of this kitchen cabinet from downhill, headed up. Which was a good thing, because old Batch, he was laying in his bed, and it went over his head as it was coming upward, and luckily missed him. Well, the Bighorn Mountains, they aren't too far away from pretty rough country, and he'd heard there was a band of rustlers out in that area, so he kept his rifle handy and returned fire. But that's the story of how these bullet holes happened to be in this sheep wagon. Yeah, I'm sure y'all know that the last one who tells the story caught the biggest fish. I'm pretty sure from the evidence of these holes, that's pretty close to what happened, right? Appreciate you following along. Thanks for watching.